It doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't burn down buildings. It leans in close, nods knowingly, and seeps into your mind without a trace. He watched his culture unravel, not by bombs, but through intellectual decay. From his prison cell, waiting for death, he penned a warning so chilling it almost vanished until today. It demands humility, and the virus feeds on the promise of emotional ease. Why wrestle with complexity when certainty feels easier? So little by little your inner voice becomes a loop of approval. You stop thinking for yourself. You start thinking to please others, to seek safety, to earn applause, to belong, and you don't even notice it happening. Because it feels like growth, like confidence, like power. But it's not power, it's a simulation, a mask of certainty covering the absence of real reflection. This is where self-justification takes hold, where you convince yourself that doubt is weakness, that disagreement is betrayal, and curiosity is danger. And once that gate closes, the mind locks tight, no longer a space for discovery, but a fortress of echoes. Every time a new doubt creeps in, your mind slams the door shut before it can breathe. I've already checked that. That source isn't trustworthy. That's just a conspiracy theory. Everyone else agrees, so I must be right. The more you crush your doubts, the stronger your certainty grows. And certainty, it's addictive. It erases complexity, replaces it with arrogance, turns disagreement into attack, makes opposing views feel like threats. And at that precise moment when you stop listening, stop wrestling with uncertainty, stop questioning your own beliefs, your mind no longer belongs to you. You begin speaking in someone else's words, repeating their catchphrases, reacting to their instincts. You still have a voice, but the thoughts behind it, they aren't your own. Because the real battle isn't about facts, it's about how you relate to the truth itself. Stupidity isn't just false information. So here's the real question. What if you're already infected? It doesn't break down your door, it slips quietly through the cracks. It's a warped sense of self. It convinces you that your opinions are your identity. So, letting go of them feels like losing yourself. And the virus understands this perfectly. That's why it doesn't argue, it blends in. It becomes part of you until the moment you challenge it, and then you feel like you're betraying who you are. That's the last phase of infection, when the parasite hides behind your ego. So the real question isn't, are you smart enough to resist? It's, are you courageous enough to question yourself? Because this war isn't waged in the streets. It happens quietly, in solitude, in the dark space between what you believe and the voice that dares to doubt it. There comes a moment, sudden and cold, when you realize you were never truly thinking. You were just performing, pleasing, nodding along, not because you were foolish, but because the person you feared disappointing was the same one who taught you what truth meant: your friends, your community, your algorithm. This is the ultimate test, and not everyone passes. Most remain trapped inside a cage adorned with memories, guarded by guilt, justified by tradition. But some break free, and when they do, they never return the same. This is your moment. You're not a child anymore. You don't need anyone's permission to grow, to doubt, to speak, to leave, to think. You don't have to keep sacrificing yourself on the altar of certainty and comfort. Because a truth that demands obedience isn't truth, it's control. And that's exactly what Bonhoeffer saw, not just in theory, but in blood. You don't hear it coming because it arrives bit by bit. It drifts in like fog, soft, silent, unassuming, until suddenly, everything inside feels familiar, yet nothing belongs to you anymore. He witnessed his nation crumble, not from bombs or bullets, but from within, from minds surrendering themselves in exchange for simplicity, for belonging, for peace. He didn't only write, he didn't just warn, he resisted, he questioned, he defied, even when it cost him everything. On April 9, 1945, mere weeks before Germany's defeat, he was executed. A theologian, a rebel, a thinker. His final words echo through time. This is the end for me, the beginning of life. He wasn't speaking of biological life. He meant something else. The life that begins when the mind is finally unshackled, when thought becomes sacred. Remember this, choosing your life means choosing your thoughts. But don't fool yourself. Thinking isn't just a mental exercise anymore. It's a radical act, a bold rebellion, a spiritual stand against a world designed to dull your senses, spoon-feed you scripted ideas, punish your doubts, and reward your compliance. In a system built to make you fear your own mind, simply stopping to ask, "Wait, what if I don't know?" becomes a revolution. So this isn't some abstract idea, it's personal, it's urgent, it's right here, in your hands. Will you protect your mind, or will you hand it over, smiling, nodding, endlessly scrolling, thinking you're still free? If this makes you uncomfortable, that's good. Because real thinking doesn't grow in comfort zones, it sparks in the clash of uncertainty, the tension of questioning. Bonhoeffer didn't die so we could just repeat his words. He died so we could wake up, so we could challenge not only the world around us, but the beliefs inside us. Not loud, not glaring, just off. Your thoughts feel slightly rehearsed, your opinions repeated, not questioned. You nod in conversations, not because you believe, but because you don't know why you agree. If you're still listening, still reading, it means you're one of the few, one of the rare minds refusing to be swallowed by noise and lies. So what now? First, subscribe if you believe thinking deserves defense. Then, comment below with one belief you're ready to question this week. And share this with someone brave enough to face discomfort head on. Because in this era of engineered ignorance, every mind that dares to think independently becomes a threat to the system. Stay sharp, stay awake, and never ever give your mind away without a fight. This is Cyples, where minds are free, not fed. You think you still decide for yourself, but your mind has been outsourced, drop by drop, to the crowd. This is the invisible takeover. No brainwashing, no violence, just endless subtle pressure, 1,000 tiny compromises, piling up until your thoughts aren't your own. How does it begin? Not with stupidity, but with fear. Fear of standing out, fear of being difficult, fear of being wrong. So we conform, not because we truly believe, but because we crave belonging. We repeat slogans, not because we understand, but because silence is safer. And in that silence, the virus spreads. It infects the minds of those who once dared to question. Until the line between truth and fiction blurs, until minds that were once bright become shadows of themselves. Because the deadliest enemy isn't ignorance. It's the comfortable lie we tell ourselves to avoid thinking too hard, the slow surrender of curiosity and courage. True stupidity, the kind that's weaponized, isn't simply the lack of intelligence. It's a silent contagion of the mind. It twists clarity into chaos, turns reflection into instinct, and swaps awareness for blind obedience. And that's where the real danger lies. Because it feels safe, we share outrage not out of true anger, but because it's expected. We accept beliefs not because they're real, but because they're repeated endlessly. Over time, the mind adapts. The brain, wired for survival, chooses the path of least resistance. Why struggle with complexity when the comfort of certainty is served on a silver platter? This is where stupidity sneaks in, not as blatant ignorance, but as emotional surrender. We often mistake stupidity for intellectual failure, but what if it's something more insidious? A failure of will, a quiet pact to never question again. This isn't stupidity as simple lack of knowledge. This is functional stupidity, a high IQ obedience dressed up as polite madness. It's the teacher who knows the truth but stays silent, the executive who senses danger but signs off anyway, the citizen who feels the unease but scrolls past without a second thought. They don't feel foolish, they feel safe. And that's exactly how the infection spreads. Because stupidity isn't noisy, it doesn't argue or shout. It smiles, it nods, it complies, until the entire room is infected, and no one remembers what it felt like to truly think. He wasn't some distant academic tucked away in a university. He was a man awaiting death behind cold concrete walls in a Nazi prison. No grand stage, no cheering crowds, just silence, cold and heavy, and endless time. Time to witness the collapse of everything he once trusted: reason, faith, human dignity. It wears the mask of confidence, certainty, even truth itself. At first, you won't see it, because it doesn't lurk only in the uninformed. This was where Dietrich Bonhoeffer's war began. Born into a prestigious German family, Bonhoeffer had every reason to believe in education's power. His father was a psychiatrist, his siblings were scientists, artists, thinkers, surrounded by intellect. He was convinced that debate and dialogue alone could hold society together. But then everything fell apart. Germany, a nation of poets, philosophers and theologians, surrendered itself to a madman. What shocked Bonhoeffer most wasn't the evil itself. It was the compliance. He saw bishops blessing hatred, scholars justifying murder, neighbors becoming informants, not because they were cruel, but because they stopped thinking. He didn't stay silent. He joined the resistance. He spoke out. He plotted against Hitler, and for that, he was imprisoned. But it wasn't the iron bars that haunted him the most. It was what he saw inside people's minds, something darker than fear, deeper than ignorance, a sickness of the soul disguised as common sense, a spiritual surrender wearing the mask of reason. In letters from prison, Bonhoeffer wrote words meant to shake future generations. Against stupidity, we have no defense, not against evil, because evil knows it's wrong. Evil hides, lies, disguises itself. But stupidity, it believes, it trusts, it obeys. Not out of compulsion, but because it has lost the ability to resist. Bonhoeffer wasn't afraid of loud hatred. He feared silent agreement. He understood that the most dangerous person isn't the one who hates you. It thrives in scholars, doctors, leaders, those we trust most. People who once questioned everything now mindlessly echo slogans they barely grasp. It's the one who has stopped thinking altogether. Behind those prison walls, stripped of everything but time, he saw the true enemy of humanity. Not bombs, not bullets, but the quiet surrender of the mind, the gradual erosion of thought, the death of conscience disguised as safety. Because when thinking stops, evil no longer needs to hide. It walks freely, dressed in obedience and smiles, and the world falls, not in a blaze, but in a slow, silent decay. Stripped of his freedom, he saw the deepest chains: mental captivity, spiritual lethargy, the silent death of thinking. That's why he wrote, not as a scholar, but as a witness, a prophet shouting into the void, desperate for ears that might still hear. He didn't die for politics. He died for truth, for the right to question, to doubt, to refuse blind obedience. And today, his warning is louder than ever, because stupidity isn't just an ancient enemy, it's evolving. It never makes a scene. No fever, no scream, no blaze, just a quiet, creeping shift, so subtle you don't realize it until it's too late. This is how it begins. This is what it looks like when your mind stops being your own. Here are 5 signs your mind has been taken over. The first sign isn't anger, it's disgust, a silent, deep resistance to complexity. You feel it when someone says, "It's not that simple." Your patience snaps. When confronted with opposing views, instead of curiosity, you feel contempt. You don't seek understanding anymore, you want to win. This isn't a joke, and it's far from new. Minds that were sharp and alive can become colonized overnight. Picture this: a brilliant scientist defending theories they once dismantled, a compassionate teacher spreading division, a caring parent passing on dangerous lies to their own children. Infected minds can't handle ambiguity. They demand heroes or villains, good or evil, right or wrong, no shades in between. Nuance? It's a betrayal, because nuance takes effort, and effort, that's the first victim of this virus. Stupidity isn't about being dumb. It's about fragility. An infected mind clings to beliefs like a child, clutches a blanket, not because they're true, but because without them, everything falls apart. You dodge challenging conversations. You take evidence personally as an attack. You don't examine ideas, you defend positions, because deep inside, the virus has rewritten a deadly lie. If I'm wrong, I'm worthless. And that lie keeps the infection alive. It starts small. You share a simple opinion. It gets likes. Feels good. Then you share a stronger opinion. More likes. Feels better. Soon, you're no longer thinking you're chasing applause. Your thoughts optimized for approval. Your morality crowdsourced. Your voice just an echo of what the algorithm wants to hear. You stop asking, is this true? You start asking, will they like this? And once that switch flips, thinking stops altogether. You become a performer, repeating catchphrases, headlines, trending buzzwords, not because you understand them, but because they're familiar. Your brain becomes a hall of mirrors, endlessly reflecting other people's thoughts. You hear your own voice, but it sounds hollow, Ask someone under this spell, what does that really mean? Watch the panic flare behind their eyes. This virus thrives where language replaces meaning, where repetition kills reflection. This is the final stage, a fortress of the mind sealed tight by the illusion of truth. These aren't villains, they're infected, and the worst part, they have no idea. Because real stupidity doesn't look stupid. It looks ordinary. Questions stop. They're not needed anymore. Because they already know, they mock doubt, demonize dissent, crucify curiosity. Challenge them, and they won't argue. They'll label you. Once the virus reaches this stage, conversation dies. No debate, no growth, only silence filled with certainty. This is the quiet collapse of thought, a surrender disguised as conviction. And it's the deadliest threat we face, because a mind that stops questioning is a mind lost forever. Only one thing remains deprogramming, because the most dangerous person isn't the doubtful one. It's the one who is certain without ever questioning. Now, look inward. Which of these signs have you caught in yourself? Not just in others, but within your own mind. Because this virus doesn't spread on lies alone, it thrives on comfort, and comfort is the perfect disguise for infection. Evil knows it's evil. It creeps in silence, cloaked in lies and shadows. Evil is deliberate, calculating, manipulating. Even the darkest acts carry a flicker of awareness, a knowing wrong. But stupidity, it doesn't hide, it smiles, shows up on time, wears a badge of honor, it follows every rule. It believes it's doing the right thing, and that's what makes it so terrifying. Evil triggers resistance, it stirs moral alarm, an instinct to fight back. But stupidity, it disarms you. It doesn't scream, it nods. It doesn't destroy, it fills out paperwork. It's the officer enforcing orders without question. It smiles, it nods, it says all the right things. And when enough minds surrender, society rots from the inside out, not with flames, but with comfort and complacency. The clerk rubber stamping a fate unseen, the citizen cheering injustice not from malice, but blindness. Bonhoeffer saw this clearly. He said, evil carries the seed of its own downfall, but against stupidity, we have no defense. You can expose evil with truth. You can awaken guilt. You can spark resistance, but stupidity, it just shrugs. It doesn't understand. And worse, it refuses to understand. It will tear down everything while believing it's building a better world. It will shout the lie louder with every fact you provide. Try to wake it, and it will laugh. Because stupidity has no conscience, not because it's cold, but because it's asleep. That's why foolishness can be kind, generous, even loving, and still terrifying. Because the virus has taken control. Kindness, when guided by stupidity, can cause more destruction than cruelty ever could. This isn't an insult. It's a warning. Evil is visible. It's a threat you can spot. But stupidity, it walks beside you. It eats with you. It becomes you the moment you stop thinking, and by the time you notice it's already grinning through your eyes. Once, stupidity spread slowly. One person, one group, one generation at a time. Now, it spreads at the speed of a scroll. It has evolved. No longer a human flaw. It's a system. Designed, refined, amplified by machines. Welcome to the age of algorithmic ignorance. Here's what's truly frightening. This isn't happening over there, to some other group. It's happening right now to you, to me, to all of us. The new virus doesn't need propaganda ministers or public trials. It has engagement metrics. It doesn't silence ideas. It drowns them out. Floods your feed with what you already believe. Louder, faster, angrier, until all that's left is your own reflection screaming back. You think you're informed, you're conditioned to feel instead of think, to react instead of reflect, to obey your emotions instead of challenge your beliefs. And this is the greatest danger, not the lies you hear, but the silence of your own mind, the refusal to question, because once you stop questioning, you stop being free. Here's the harsh reality.
It works. Social media doesn't need to lie outright.
It just has to make truth less appealing than the fantasy. Because stupidity doesn't demand deceit, it thrives on distraction. Picture this. You click on a video that stirs your anger. You watch it all the way through. The algorithm nods approvingly. It feeds you 10 more, just like it. Truth, irrelevant. What matters is, you stayed glued to the screen. And so the infection spreads not by evil intent, but by cold calculation. These platforms are designed for addiction, not for facts. What grabs the most attention? Certainty, outrage, simplicity, the perfect storm for stupidity to breed. The longer you linger inside that bubble, the less you can question what lies beyond it. This is the new evolution. What if the greatest threat to humanity isn't war or hatred, but simply ordinary people who've stopped thinking? One man foresaw this collapse. Stupidity disguised as passion, as confidence, as the feeling of always being right. But it's not your mind working. It's a machine, thinking for you using your own biases as fuel. Worse still, these systems learn faster than we can keep up. They adapt. They know exactly what triggers your rage, your clicks, your shares. They keep you shouting, believing you're informed, but you're not informed. You're fed. Fed what sparks anger, fed what stokes fear, fed what locks you into the comfort of being right. This isn't just stupidity anymore. It's engineered ignorance, machine-fed, self-reinforcing, psychologically tuned for mass consumption. And it's winning, because even the smartest people you know are caught in its grip. Not because they're unintelligent, but because they stopped watching how they think. They handed that job to machines. You don't notice the battle when it begins. Because it doesn't feel like a war. It's confusion. A fog rolling over your thoughts, heavy with software, familiar and subtle. It starts with a whisper. Why complicate things? Just trust the experts. Everyone agrees. And that's how it slips inside. Not by force, but by comfort. The first casualty, your curiosity. You stop asking, why, then doubt fades away. You avoid tough questions, not because you've found answers, but because those questions stir feelings you don't want to face. This is how the virus spreads. It doesn't target your intellect, it attacks your willingness to live with uncertainty. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable,